and instead of us going to look for a purpose. So if we just ask, I'm here in service. I would like to be all that I came here to be. Put that out there over and over again, and I'm sure that it'll come back. Yeah.
I heard the other day that the telepathytapes.com podcast had rivaled Joe Rogan. I don't know if this is true, but certainly people are talking about it. Kai Dickens has done research on autism, and she believes that autistic nonverbal children have a telepathic link between themselves and their caregivers. It's a fascinating idea that many parents are gravitating toward to understand how this works. Our guest today, Suzy Miller, has been investigating the same thing. She believes that autism is a shift in human consciousness, not a disorder. Autistic children have many gifts that she believes will aid in our human evolution. Suzy Miller founded the Autism Integration Series, which is a forum for adults, parents, practitioners to talk about how she believes that autistic nonverbal children may need other ways and other forms of communication, such as telepathy and other energetic support. She has appeared on podcasts on Gaia, and she is a really unusual voice that comes from direct listening, direct experiences that she has had. And she's come up with a very fascinating conclusion.
In that case, it took a year to have the light body completely reintegrate with the physical body, to the point where he was now able to be, I would say, functionally communicative. So yeah, it took that long. And during that year-long process, what was also happening was that there were all kinds of skill sets that I didn't even know I had, or I had forgotten that I had, that came rushing back to the surface. So telepathy was one of those. I was also learning how to use kind of multidimensional kinds of healing techniques that were innate to me, but I didn't know that they were innate to me until this little 4-year-old boy put the key in and, turned. Right when he turned that key, you might say, and opened me up, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that that was my purpose. I mean, I had the idea that I was going down one particular pathway, and I thought I was going to be a really wonderful speech language pathologist for the rest of my life. And it just kind of like you take a hard right and say, no, this is what you're going to be doing instead. The biggest challenge to living my purpose was really allowing myself to believe it wholeheartedly, so that it could stand up against what other people might shoot down, if that makes sense. So it's one thing to have these experiences with these kids and to hear telepathically and see multidimensionally and all of that. It's another thing to put that information out into the world and have all the naysayers, suggest that that couldn't quite be possible, when it, in your heart of hearts that it is. I think it's had tremendous effect on those that I've worked with. So those that I've worked with have benefited greatly from me just stepping into that purpose and not shutting it down. And they've benefited because they understand now, more of who they are. I think anybody that starts living their purpose, they understand more of who they are, so they can then pass that along to somebody else. And I think collectively, I think the world knows that autism isn't what we perceived it to be. So that there's a lot more to these kids and to this population than we might have considered in the past. So from my vantage point, autism is a mismatch between the soul's vibrational expression and our human experience. The soul's vibrational expression for many of these kids is vast. I see them as the new human or a new species, like a new iteration, part of our human evolution, you might say. And so to me, autism is just that whole consciousness coming in and trying to be present in a consciousness that is not quite that yet, but that's what they're here for. I would say simply ask. So if we're looking for the opportunity to find our purpose, I would say simply ask, to really ask, to have that be something that is of interest to you, because I believe that our purposes find us, and instead of us going to look for a purpose. So if we just ask, I'm here in service. I would like to be all that I came here to be. Put that out there over and over again, and I'm sure that it'll come back. So if more of us were living our purpose, the world would be a better place. I mean, we want everybody to be stepping into who they are in truth. And from my vantage point, a lot of the children that are here now are also helping each and every one of us to do just that. What I've learned directly from the kids on the spectrum or those diagnosed with autism is that they have collectively come here to help evolve human consciousness. The capacities that they have, as far as that you might say are associated with oneness or with unity, they already have that. That's already their template. They have a very hard time sometimes expressing that here, because here's not unity yet. But a lot of what they're coming to demonstrate is the skill sets that we all have when we function in a unified field. So children diagnosed with autism have a really challenging time fully being here, and they have repeatedly said that they cannot be here on planet Earth fully embodied, their light and their form together, until here is the frequency of love. And in order to bring us back to the frequency of love, we need to start focusing on what unifies both within ourselves and externally. We need to start focusing on what unifies instead of what separates, divides, creates division. I've had a lot of amazing experiences working with kids diagnosed on the spectrum, and they've taken me into all kinds of worlds and realities. And they use every opportunity to change perspectives, to have somebody in their midst see what is beyond what's the norm, what's right in front of them physically. So one of those experiences that I had was a child that was, I think he was probably 10 or 12 at the time. I was sitting with his mother on a park bench, and he walked over to me, grabbed my hand. When he grabbed my hand, he took me into a different, you might say, a different field of consciousness. This child was nonverbal, spells to communicate, but was nonverbal in the 3D physical world. When he grabbed my hand, my consciousness leaves my body, and the next thing I know, we're in a completely different environment. He's opening a door, and as he opens the door, he says verbally, completely clear, "Welcome to my art studio." And so we're inside this art studio, and he's telling me verbally why he loves art in the 3D world, why he loves making art, why he has his mother send these different pieces of art to different people in his family. He sent pieces of art to me at one point. And so I'm, in this space with him where he's verbally communicating. And all of a sudden he says, my mom wants you. And he starts releasing tension on my hand. My consciousness goes back into my body. I turn my head slowly. His mom's still sitting next to me on the bench, and she says, what's wrong with you? You've been staring like straight ahead for the last 5 minutes. What the heck's going on? And I said, I'm with Jackson. I'm with your son. I'll be back in a minute. She knew me well enough to know that some weird things could be happening, so she didn't second guess that. I went back up, spent time with Jackson until he was done explaining to me some of the things that he wanted me to know, and that he wanted his mother to know, and that he wanted me to share with others. And then he released my hand. My consciousness came back into my body, and he went back to being nonverbal. I've known Jackson for a very long time. Jackson was about 5 years old when I first met him. He's now 16, 17, and we have had all kinds of different experiences throughout our connection with each other. One of them was him taking me with the bench, up into that other realm. As of this year, which is 2024, he has decided that he wanted to verbally communicate. He's been wanting to verbally communicate for as long as I've known him. And at one point I said to him, Jackson, if you can take me into another world and you can completely verbally communicate there, why can't I create a world here where you can verbally communicate here? And he really liked that idea. As of January 2024, he, for whatever reason, decided in that time that he could now verbally communicate in my field. And so his mother picked him up from his day program one day, and he verbally said, Suzy. And we know each other, so she's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? What happened? He spells out, I want to communicate with Suzy. So we've been spending every Monday, the last probably 4 Mondays now, maybe 5 Mondays, and he's verbally communicating. So that's where he is, and it just blows me away. I mean, here's a kid that, I've known for such a long time, and to hear his voice and to have him both telepathically communicate with me, spell to communicate, and verbally communicate now in any one of these sessions is pretty amazing. Riley, the very first child that woke me up when he was 4, is now 27, 28 years old, maybe a little bit older than that. He is still verbally communicating. If you saw him, he would look like an autistic individual as far as his mannerisms and behavior, but is now verbally continues to be verbal. So he kind of set the energy, he set the stage for all of this. And Jackson is, you might say, landing all of that energy and bringing that into the forefront so that anybody who wants it can benefit from it. The collective consciousness of the children has been another voice in my ear for many years at this point. And we're at a time in human history, right here, right now, where those higher states of consciousness that these kids have been bringing can now land. They can manifest in this world at this time, which means that we're going to start taking on all the skill sets or many of the skill sets that are associated with unity consciousness. So in unity consciousness, telepathy makes a whole lot of sense because there's no separation, there's no division. Healing abilities, bilocation, all of these kinds of things that seem like they're extraordinary on one level, they're saying that no, all of that is coming into play now, and we are evolving into the, you might say, the new human that we've always been, yeah, to our future selves. So around the theme of unity consciousness, as we start moving out of separation consciousness and and into unity consciousness, we're going to be experiencing all kinds of different skill sets that have always been ours, but quite frankly have been obscured by the ways in which we have been conditioned into separation. So every single human being on this planet comes in whatever energetic template they come in as. They are all here to support the collective unification of humanity. And as that energy rises, as that template of unity consciousness rises, what we notice is we begin to lose those parts of ourselves that have created separation or divisiveness. We lose our ego mind identities. And we are seeing that right now in human history. So you can say all of the stuff that's coming up in the outer world or out in the 3D world, all the divisiveness, all the separation, all that energy. The kids said a long time ago, I think it was back in 2016, that the underworld had closed. And when they said the underworld had closed, I asked them what that meant. And they said that it was all about the rise of unity consciousness, that everything that was hidden in the underworld, that was divisive, separation, all of that, there was no place for that to hide anymore. So as that energy starts building, then what ends up happening is every single human being on this planet goes through their own process of losing their separation identity so that they can return to who they are in truth. The more we return to who we are in truth, that unity consciousness, the more we naturally and organically exhibit skill sets that are akin to that consciousness. Some will have some of those skill sets prior to others, just to show these are some of the options coming down the pike. This is what's going to be available to everyone, everywhere. And this is just the time we're in right now. The energetic flow that's coming in is helping every single one of us do this. And one of the things I would say to everybody is, on a very practical level, as your stuff is coming up, as your triggers are coming up, as your those things that have kept you in that divisive energy come to the surface, please be present with them. Be with them. Instead of trying to separate yourself from that and go do something else or try to distract yourself from it, literally be with it. Because the unity consciousness that you are is the aspect of you, or the totality of you that is capable of being connected to everything and anything. So as you work that muscle, just watch what skill sets start to arise within you. My experience with telepathic communication says that telepathic communication is a heart-to-heart connection, first and foremost. When telepathy first starts happening, it can feel like it's happening to you, not that you're quote-unquote doing telepathy. At least that was my experience. I was just simply hearing the messages of the kids. But every one of us hears messages every single day. Most of us have been trained to turn off that message or to denounce it, and all I'm going to suggest here is that telepathy is there. It's available for each and every one of us all day, every day. It's, are we tuning into it? Are we paying attention to it? And so those little moments that just run across, those little thoughts that come through, if we just pay attention to them, and or if something happens and that message is, a connection is made. I think the one that most people use is, you think of somebody and the telephone rings. Well, when those kinds of things happen, as long as we don't dismiss that, as long as we acknowledge that, oh, that happened, that must be a skill set that I have, instead of, oh, that's a coincidence. That can be a beautiful starting point. Telepathy, when we're expressing or when we're sharing telepathy, I don't even know how to say that. It's a oneness. So telepathy literally is a oneness. It's not so much a matter of verbal communication, like giving and receiving. Giving and receiving takes place within telepathic communication, but it's coming from a place of oneness. So when you telepathically communicate with anybody, either by accident or on purpose, it is because you have completely aligned with that individual, that heart-to-heart connection. And once you've made that heart-to-heart connection, you are one. Their thoughts are your thoughts are theirs. One and the same. In 2013, I was working with Professor William Tiller. He was a Stanford emeritus professor who had left Stanford to start looking into intention. And he created something called the intention host device, where we could broadcast intention to autistic families around the world. And basically what happened there is the collective consciousness of the children gave me two intentions. One was for them to fully integrate into their bodies. The other was to support their parents in kind of de-stressing around having children diagnosed with autism. And we ran a scientific experiment, basically, where we broadcast this intention to these families. I think the furthest family was in Australia. We were broadcasting from Arizona. And for some children, within hours of turning on that broadcast, children had 20 new words, or they were starting to communicate in certain ways. Other children were losing behaviors that they had had for a really long time. One parent was talking about the fact that she always perceived that her child did not see her as a separate, entity, a separate being, or that didn't even recognize that she was there in the first place. And within hours of turning on this intention device, he was asking his mom how she felt, asking questions that were more personal to her. So that experiment, we lasted 3 years. We did 3 different groups of children, and it was robustly successful, as Bill Tiller would say. So when Bill and I were having conversations about creating the Autism Intention Experiment, and we were starting to invite families in, and I would have conversations with Bill Tiller, myself, and different families that might be interested in doing this. These were all families that I had been training in one way or another at that point. And so we had kids that were literally, just by having the conversation that we were going to start it prior to turning it on, that were already speaking a new word or saying something to their parents to let them know that they knew that this was going to take place.
I want to do a shout out to Sandy Sedgbeer of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, who introduced us to Suzy Miller in Sedona. The No BS Spiritual Book Club is an incredible project that Sandy has put together, where she interviews incredible researchers, scientists, thinkers, authors, and celebrities from around the world about their top 10 favorite books. Check it out. It's an incredible project because at the Purpose Lab, we have noticed that books is one of the most important things that changes people's lives. If you would like to receive our top 10 books for finding your purpose, sign up here on our email.